Thank you, everybody, for being here. Let me introduce Arnau Carbonell. The presentation will be done in English, though I think that most of us are Catalan, but we had, we will continue with this international profile, so we will do our presentation in English. Well, Arnau Carbonell is a PhD student. He is working with Héctor Orengo and me in his PhD about in the landscape archaeology research group. His research is focused in the Pyrenees. He's working in the Cerdanya region, trying to do a holistic research which takes care of the plain together with the high mountain environments, which is one of the lines of research that we have developed from GIAP in these last years. He's working in the framework of a minister pre-doctoral program in Translands project, which is directed by Héctor Orengo and me and myself. So you will see that it's important in relation with the characterization of livestock activities, transhumance, and the management of high mountain environments. Especially in Roman times. This is especially important in this area because of the presence of a Roman town, which is present today, Libya, the village of Libya, which was Iulia Lybica in Roman imperial times. So in relation with the management of these mountain environments in the territorium of this Roman city, I think that the research of the results and the research that Arnau is developing will be extremely interesting. So with no more delay, I give you now your turn, and so you will project your presentation, and good luck.
Thank you very much, José María, for this presentation. I will start to share my screen. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you all for attending this online seminar. I'm very glad to be here and to be able to present the context of my thesis research. Territorial structuring and occupation dynamics of the Eastern Pyrenean Highlands, an archaeomorphological study between the Cerdanya Plain and the High Mountains. Okay, this work is included in the Translands project, where from previous GIAP project, the focus is extended to the northeast of the peninsula to address a trans-Mediterranean study promoting the analysis of cultural landscapes as an indirect and mean to understand cultural, economic, and environmental interactions. Within this framework, several areas of the study will be taken into account: Emporion and the Emporion coastal plain, Abdera, in Thrace, Greece, and Iulia Lybica and the surrounding of Pyrenees valleys, an area where the study of my thesis will be focused, combining the study of high mountain and plain areas. These cultural landscapes will be ideal to execute the multidisciplinary approaches with which the GIAP has already worked previously and to extract general knowledge on cultural processes, landscape change dynamics, and dynamics of occupation and structuring of the territory. In the case of high mountain spaces, it is well known that the marginality with which historiography has traditionally perceived mountain areas has changed in the recent decades, thanks to the increase in research into the main European mountain systems, raised on landscape archaeology methodology, with multidisciplinary and diachronic approaches. The results obtained in these studies show that the human impact in these spaces has been intense, and they constitute authentic cultural landscapes modeled over time. In this context, since 2004, the GIAP has carried out several research projects in high mountain areas in the Eastern Pyrenees. Between 2004 and 2009, the research has focused on the Madriu, Pedrafita, and Claró valleys and La Serra del Cadí in Alt Segre. Since 2010, several projects of the Pla Nacional have been carried out in les valls de l'Alter, la Vall de Núria, Coma de Vaca, and Freser, a Ripollès. Since 2018, and within the framework of the thesis, the research focused on the valleys of the axial Pyrenees of La Cerdanya, west of Puigcerdà. The results in these areas show the importance of pastoral activities in the processes of anthropization on the highlands since the Neolithic era, and allow a history of human activities developed on these valleys over time. Our area of study will be defined by a subjective consideration represented by a Roman colonial enclave of great importance on the area, Iulia Lybica, Libya, in relation to the control and exploitation of the surrounding high mountain spaces from the moment that this nucleus becomes a Roman municipality. Therefore, the high mountain works carried out by the GIAP in the area of this project has focused on the area of the Puigpedrós Massif and the head of La Vall del Duran, Maranges. A total of 119 structures so far, grouped in a total of 20 sites, have been documented. Until now, the research has comprised the excavation of test pits in a total of 5 sites and 16 structures located between 2,300 and 2,500 meters. The results show a very important occupation sequence, a very important first phase during the late Neolithic, a second period at the beginning of the Iron Age, very rare in the Pyrenean context, a Roman occupation, and an expansion of livestock activities in late antiquity, and finally, occupation during the Middle Ages has been also attested to the present days. The archaeological sites are areas of livestock occupation, dry stone huts, and enclosures, but also settlements surrounded by dry stone walls with differentiated occupation phases. Consequently, it will be necessary to expand the study to the east in the municipality of Guils, close to the town of Puigcerdà and Llívia, and to the west in el Vall de la Llosa y Vallcivera. In this way, a complete archaeological map of the whole sector will be obtained, which will be associated with the previously studied area by the GIAP, making it possible to characterize archaeologically the high mountain spaces of the Cerdanya environment. This is why the thesis will be restricted under the following chronospatial predefined lineage: a multitemporal and diachronical scale, the late Neolithic to the late Antiquity, with a special interest in the Roman period, and an area defined by the Cerdanya plain and the surrounding mountains and valleys. But what do we understand as cultural landscape? The concept of landscape is subject to definition, as it is fundamentally based on the relationship between a person and his environment. Physically, then, a landscape has no limits, because it is the observer himself who selects a certain landscape, an ever-changing entity. The term scale, in this case, is essential, especially when we are working in a multi-scale environment. The possibility of observing these landscapes allows the context of the observed phenomena to be contextualized and facilitates the comparison of local dynamics and the relationship with border dynamics. The union of archaeomorphological, archaeological, and documentary analysis will be the main to understand the cultural and economic links, with a particular interest in the study of the socio-environmental interactions of these spaces, and thus design models that will be able to integrate the configuration and dynamics of cultural landscapes. In order to be able to carry out this type of study, it is important to propose a methodology that adapts to the needs of the research where landscape studies, high mountain archaeology, and archaeomorphological analysis will take part. As we have seen, the thesis will we will have to integrate in a database the set of information coming from the high mountain studies carried out by the GIAP in the Eastern Pyrenees. A review of other studies in La Cerdanya is also being carried out, such as the doctoral research of Cira Crespo and Jordi Morera, to integrate the information into unique database that will be the basis of the territorial study. One of the starting points was the creation of a cartographic geodatabase with GIS software, with access to cartographic and photographic material, result of an emptying of the digital cartographic documentation, ancient and modern, looking for the largest numbers of maps, integrating them into a database with a spatial reference, aka geodatabase. For some of the queried maps, municipal minutes, old maps, hiker maps, etc., I had to georeference them. For that, I had to process them with a minimum of 10-15 control points, processed with a second-order polynomial, for a greater adaptation of the central areas and less deformation of the extreme and marginal sectors of the map. Here you have a small representation of some capes of my cartographic database. A topographic, digital elevation model created from LiDAR data, useful to define on a cartographic plane the reliefs and the orography of the terrain, but also for defining natural corridors or calculating optimal slopes for the arrangement of the structures. Also, old and historic maps, very useful for establishing a relative chronology with road network, for example. But all of these are also complemented with vector information such as the hydrology, geological maps, and soil uses like the GIAP map. This cartographic geodatabase will allow us the correct development of works of photo interpretation and prospection. This will be very useful for us to allow a comprehensive view of the physical area of our study sector. Once we have our cartographic base, the photo interpretation works using high-resolution multitemporal aerial photography will allow us to make two complementary approaches in this class of works. A first one, locate visible structures in aerial photography, and with this, defining areas of greatest archaeological interest, helping to plan the survey works in high mountain areas, but also carry out an exhaustive archaeomorphological work of the study area, essential in the view of one of the objectives of this research. Here you can see, in red, one example of elements that we can perceive from high-definition orthophotos provided by the Institut Cartogràfic i Geològic de Catalunya, being able to detect some structures to evaluate the field. Also, in the left, we can see, comparing between old and modern aerial photographs, that even the quality allows us to detect changes that provide us an antequem chronology of the structures documented in archaeological sites, such as this circular shepherd hut created later than the American flight of 1956. This brings us to one of the strengths of the methodology of this research, the archaeomorphology. As we have already seen, we consider the landscape as an archaeological element by itself, susceptible to be studied from a diachronical or long-term perspective, defining the various formative phases of the macro structures that make it up, as well as their function in different historical periods. The next step will be to develop an archaeomorphological analysis, which we have already begun to perform, and complement it with LiDAR or GIS technologies as support, to focus on the detection of traces that define the use of anthropized spaces. For example, the emergence of the formation of radial road network, constructions like this airport, anthropic water supplies, changes in the agrarian plot system, aggregation of the plot in these cases, if we're comparing the old photos with the new ones, with the recent, and changes, for example, in the hydrographic network and a large, etc. The archaeomorphology has been consolidated in recent decades as an extremely useful discipline for the study of the traces or forms of the historical landscapes, and especially for knowing the forms of structuring the territory in different historical periods. Our materials of this study will be basically old aerial photo as a direct representation of reality, the previous image to the great urban transformations previous to the 60s, and the old maps, understanding, of course, the cartography as an extraction of reality. That will allow us to detect fossilizations of ancient roads within urban plots, for example. Therefore, with an intensive and systematic emptying of the thematic vector layers, we could detect and define significant and morphological elements like the road network, the intensification of the agrarian field system, administrative and historical boundaries, and physical elements like hydrographic network. As a result, we will get our first chronological approximation. In this way, we will have defined a series of sequences of relative chronologies between itineraries that will then have to be contrasted throughout the prospecting works. Another vital step will be the phase of survey and archaeological excavation to complement the archaeological map and the study of the occupation of the territory. The support of photo-interpretative analysis will be very helpful, taking into account the conditions of the high mountain spaces. In these cases, we try to obtain highly relief information on specific archaeological structures, documenting the typology, the construction techniques, recovering organic material to obtain absolute dating, and obtaining cultural material which will allow us to generate hypotheses regarding the cultural ascriptions of these spaces. Then, a field control in the plane will also serve as a method of checking the hypotheses previously made during the first phase of the archaeomorphological analysis, from physical characterization of road traces and adding a vision of the road network in geomorphological and archaeological context. Finally, but not less important, it is necessary to mention the importance of the study of medieval and modern writing documentation about population. Create a medieval settlement database will be essential. The medieval settlement, for example, helps us to a better understanding of the origins of the structuring of the historical landscapes, as many of their centers have their genesis in medieval times. Also, we can characterize these populations in the appearing of radial road systems superimposed in the territory. For that, we will have to make an emptying analysis of the most significant writing documentations, documentary sources, and diplomatic compilations, historical books and routes, paths and trips, hiking guides, cadastral information of the beginning of the 20th century, etc. These elements are very useful, not only of the road network of the plain, but also by the extension of the older territory. As a conclusion then, given a brief summary of the starting point of the development of this work, we can define the main objective of the thesis following the proposed methodology. The first one, structure and define the territory and the dynamics of occupation of the Eastern Pyrenean highland from a diachronic perspective, but with special attention to the Roman period. The second one, to define the territorial implementation of Iulia Lybica in relation to the control and exploitation of the certain high mountain spaces. And the final one, to develop an archaeomorphological analysis, especially in the Cerdanya plain, in order to characterize the implementation of a possible model of centuration in relation to Iulia Lybica, the occupation and the structuring of the territory. And that was all for now. Thank you very much for your attention. If there is any question, annotation, comment, and suggestion, feel free to ask in English, Català, Castellà, but please, no Japanese.
I'm going to do the first question, if you don't mind, in order to start the discussion. And well, I would like. I think that one of the points that you are going to work is to study is to analyze the interaction between plain and mountain, and this is not at all easy to do, no? Because you have a settlement, an important settlement occupation in the plain, no? Diachronical occupation, but especially focused on Roman times in the foundation of a Roman city, a Roman town. And then you have also this stational occupation of high mountain environments. So how are you going to analyze this interaction between plain and mountain in order to characterize this Pyrenean landscape as a whole environment?
Well, first of all, we have to take account that we need to obtain more data from the high mountain spaces surrounding the Cerdanya plain. We talk about the expansion of the study to the east and to the east to complement all the information of the settlements that we can prospect or take information about with the test pits that provide us archaeological information to be related with the settlement to the plain. That's about the settlement. We need to characterize correctly the settlements in the plain and to the mountain with a good chronology between all of them, and then we need to complement it with the archaeomorphological analysis, for example, from the routes or the path that will allow us to complement these settlements in the mountain, probably making secondary products from the plain, and how it related them with these functions of the settlements and the functions of the road traces. So this is why this research is complementary with the high mountain archaeology and the archaeomorphology and the settlement studied from all the area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Arnau. So if there's someone that wants to ask something yes, Lydia Colomines, please.
Ara em sentiu, ara?
Sí, et sentim fluixet.
Una mica amb el que parlava el Josep Maria i fent una proposta així una mica... Ja em direu què en penseu, però potser valdria la pena per intentar integrar més això plana muntanya, plana Cerdanya i muntanya. Potser seria molt interessant no només fer petits sondejos en les estructures, sinó poder començar a excavar alguna d'extensió. Jo crec que seria molt interessant i que també li donaria a l'Arnau un munt de dades per poder precisament vincular això, plana Cerdanya i alta muntanya. Com ho veieu? Ens animem o no?
Si em permetes seguir la teva línia, Lídia, jo crec que dins de la potencialitat dels jaciments que tenim a alta muntanya, alguns amb unes seqüències que ja hem pogut documentar molt riques, podríem extreure una quantitat d'informació bestial. Això sí, caldria molt una planificació de quins serien els punts o quin seria el jaciment en concret que hauríem d'excavar per tal de portar una informació que ens pugui portar unes dades que puguin canviar una mica la interpretació que portem fins ara. Així que estaríem molt d'acord en poder, de cara als darrers anys, poder planificar un treball com aquest. Però bé, moltes gràcies, Lídia.
Allà estarem.
Ha demanat també la paraula José Óscar Encuentra. Adelante.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Arnau, for this presentation. I've got several questions. I don't know if because I guess that you are in the first steps of your research. So I don't know if you are going to be able to answer this, but maybe with some of the readings that you have done for your initial bibliography research, are you going to be able? So I am interested in two main questions. Is first of all, which kind of activities? I guess which kind of activities is Iulia Lybica the center of that put together kind of economical activity in the region? So it's agriculture, is kind of a mining. Which is the role of Iulia Lybica on that plain of the Pyrenees? And a second question will be, okay, I know that your main research is about the plain and the interaction between Iulia Lybica with its hinterland and landscape, but which are the external connections of Iulia Lybica in Roman times? So, so if there is some kind of economical activity there, which is the output of their, which are the roads that goes out from this plain? So are you thinking the main is just towards current Catalonia, or there is a main role of maybe Iliberis or Rusquino on the French side? Well, that's my main two questions. I don't know if you are able to answer me on the initial stage of your research. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I will try to answer you. About the first one, the activities of Iulia Lybica, well, we have to understand that when a Roman enclave of this magnitude appear in a place like the Pyrenees, it's nothing strange, because we are talking about the traditional osteography, talk about the high mountain spaces like marginal places. But with that, we are considered that if we have the evidence of a Roman enclave in this type of sites, well, the Cerdanya Plain is like a natural corridor to connect the areas of the peninsula and the Rusquino, like you say. So we have to understand this place like an exploitation, the territory, also like every other Roman enclave exploit their environment. In this case, it's probably about the agriculture, the livestock activities, and complemented with activities to the mountain, maybe pastoral, or well, we need to focus with more data about this. But I don't know if Josep Maria wants to add something about this, because it is true that I am in my first phase of my study. So I don't know if more or less I answered your question. Hector, do you want to add something?
Hector, yeah. Hector.
Okay, yes, that's a very interesting question. I mean, one of the dynamics we have been seeing with this kind of Roman settlement, big settlements in provincial settings, is that, you know, I mean, they have productions for their own consumption, which are pretty standard, but they have also very particular productions that are typical of actually they are based on traditional production, pre-Roman productions that, you know, that get to be exported as a kind of luxury products, or products that can be produced with extreme facility in the area. Okay, so in this case we have documented a very intensive exploitation of pitch. Okay, because there was lots of a very high mountain environment with high resin pine trees, Pinus uncinata, which and we have found I think it was eight ovens, and those are the ones we have found. Probably there were hundreds more with continuous occupation from the 1st century to the 7th century. So, and we know these were probably used continuously and at the same time. So that's extremely high pitch and charcoal production, and this was probably related to the exploitation of metal, which we have in Madrid and Cadiz some examples. So these are this kind of productions that are more massive, and, you know, they are typical of the area. We also have, we think we have some examples of luxury productions which are very much linked to the typical kind of traditional activities. In this case, Iulia Lybica was quite well known for the perna queretana, for the ham. Okay, and we have found several typical pig enclosures in high mountain settings, and we have a paper written, which we have not sent for the last 3 years, but it's there. So eventually, I think we will be able to publish it. And okay, although Iulia Lybica it's surrounded by high mountains, it was very well communicated, and we have, for example, in Empúries, lots of examples of the export of pitch. Okay, and we know the perna queretana was in the Edict of Prices, you know, was exported to the whole of the Roman world. So even this kind of, in principle, isolated areas had very specific productions with a very long range distribution. I don't know if this answers your question. Okay. that was it.
Yeah, no, yeah. Thank you. I'm interested. I'm interested because I'm really curious to know the production that you have answered and the which was the connections. If it was more Ampuria, so it was more the part of Rusquino, and then going to export the production from Narbonne, or it's a local production. So yeah, no, that's a topic that I will follow on that, because I am doing my research about the production as well of the coming from the production of metals in the area of the Canigou and the export from Narbonne. Just one last question: are you going to extend this research to the area of Andorra?
Well,
to the palace of you have called about the Madriu Claro Pelafita.
Yeah, precisely. Hector Orengo worked in the Vall de Madriu, Petrafita and Claró in his thesis research, working with this settlement that we're talking about, the exploitation of the pitch production and all the archaeological in the high mountain spaces of this area. So I don't know.
Yeah, cool, perfect. Yeah, no, perfect. So I will follow. Yeah, I thought that if you've got anything published, I will be able to find this on the ICAG website, or.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think my PhD is it's freely available, but I can send you a copy. In any case, we have like 10 papers or so. I think they are in the ICAG webpage and also in our media profile. So it shouldn't be a problem. If you have any problem, you can always drop an email.
Okay, yeah. So we will be in touch.
Perfect.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to the discussion that it's evident that the presence of this Roman town in Cerdanya Plain is connected with these activities, these economical activities that we have been talking about. And then also the emplacement of the city, of the site, is in relation with a complex road network, essentially the main valley, but also through mountain valleys, which also connect and do a complex road network that justifies the settlement. So in relation with markets, obviously we are working in the context of Tarraconensis, Roman Tarraconensis. So Ampurias and Gerunda would be also the central plain, Parthenon, so on, would be areas of distribution. But and Iulia Lybica acts as a central market in this way, in a regional way, not only local but also regional. But as you know, the Pyrenees were also were only an administrative border, not a limit, or an administrative limit, not a border, as is could be later in modern times. So the relationship with Narbonense obviously is very straight as well, very high, and we should also imagine that good relationship and market and commercial exchanges with Rusino or with Narbonne, for instance, no? in South France, in today's South France. So it's a very important site, which also now, as you know, maybe you know, now from ICAG, a team connected with the Autonomous of Barcelona is working on the excavation of the site, and this also of the Roman town. I mean, the center of the Roman town in today Libya village, and this also in the line that Livia Colomina suggests. This also is good. I'm sure that these excavations, which are long-term excavations, would provide a lot of information in order to answer these important questions that you are talking about.
Good. Thank you very much.
So, more questions, more details, or something that anyone wants to ask to Arnau? No? Well, if there is no more questions, Arnau, I think it's time to leave and to thank everybody for being here after these Eastern holidays. and thank you also to you, Arnau, for preparing this presentation, and good luck for the continuation of your PhD and your research in the Pyrenees.
We'll have a lot of work for the words, so thank you very much.